Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome, Axel, Ben, Peter, Bergen. Am I saying correct? Bergen or Bergen? How you guys are doing today? Happy Tuesday.
I am Borgen.
Bergen, okay. Hey, Axel, I can see you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can see and hear you guys.
Awesome. Where are you located, Axel and Bergen?
I'm in Pacifica.
San Francisco, SF.
San Francisco, awesome. So right now at the moment we have Bryan, who's going to be our main speaker today. Also, I want to welcome Ben and Peter. Can you guys hear us? It might be just connecting so far. Awesome. Can you guys also see the screen with the West Coast CTOs and Tech Pros first slide for the presentation?
For me, it's an empty green rectangle. That's all that there is.
Okay, let me see. So
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Now we can see it. Welcome, Rachel. Welcome, Jerry, Johnny. How you guys are doing? We're gonna give 3 more minutes for people to join our event, and then we're gonna start with our agenda. Rachel, Jerry, Johnny, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Indeed.
Awesome. Hey, I can see you now, Gary and Johnny. Where are you guys located?
I'm in Los Angeles in Woodland Hills.
Okay, I'm in San Diego. Johnny, where are you?
I'm in wine country outside of Portland, Oregon, in a place called Sherwood. And but I work out of LA, and we've got offices East Coast, and we've got a studio setting up in Ireland and other things. So
sweet.
Johnny, where is wine country?
Sherwood, Oregon, Dundee, there in the valley.
Nice.
That direction. I'm literally like 4 minutes from Rex Hill.
Beautiful.
Okay. Rachel, can you hear us? I think Rachel might be connecting barely. Oh, there she is, I think. Also, welcome to Diego. Hey, Diego, how's it going? Good afternoon. Welcome. All right, we're gonna give 2 more minutes for people to join. Now I can see Rachel. Hey, Rachel. Okie dokie. So for today, I wanna also introduce Giselle, who's under the Powdevs account. She's gonna be our host for the presentation. So if there's any issue, just please let us know in the chat, and we will happy fix it as soon as possible. And 1 more minute, and we will start.
Thank you, Bernardo. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the West Coast and CTOs Tech Pros event. So I'm going to be here. If anything you need, just I'm a shot away, okay?
Awesome, Giselle. Thank you very much. Does any one of you have access for the Metaverse? That's going to be today's topic. I was telling Bryan that I just bought my Oculus Rift 2 months ago, so I'm excited about this chat. There we go. Look, Johnny, he has his equipment right there. Sweet. All right, Giselle, let's start with our event.
This was the best one. No.
Oh, sweet. Hey, Ben, how's it going? Now I can see you.
Pretty good.
Awesome. So to start, I want to welcome you guys. We are different people from different parts of the US. I'm located in San Diego. So if you guys want to just hop a plane and get some tacos and beers in Tijuana, just let me know, all right? I'm always open to organize that kind of trip. So for today and our icebreaker question, it's going to be very simple. It's going to be, if you could take a plane right now, where would you go for spring break and why? We're going to go just giving some time to each of you to talk about the question. Also, feel free to tell us what's the company you're representing in your role. So I'm going to spin the bottle, and let's start with Axel. That's the first guy that I see on my screen. Axel, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Where would I go? Probably to Fiji. And the company I present is called Abacus Semiconductor Corporation. And we are focusing on making supercomputers more scalable. So 100,000 cores, in fact, giving you 100,000 times the performance of one core, and not 100,000 cores giving you the performance of 5,000, because that's a waste of 95,000 cores, right? So that's what we are doing. That's what we focus on.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. The next one I see on my screen is Bergen. Bergen, go ahead. I think you're muted, Bergen.
I am CTO at ATL Technologies, ATL Technology located in San Francisco. We are developing software services. Our team is a 7 to 5 software development engineer. It's a small, no small, I think this is a middle-sized company.
Awesome. And if you could take a plane right now, where would you go for spring break and why?
When I researched, I found for me interesting. That's your presentation. That names the 4 CTOs. I am in US. I am in the US base. I moved to another country to US, but I want interesting about which of US based CTOs role and responsible. Yes, but I want
Understood.
to join US. Okay.
Awesome. So the next one I have on my screen is Gary. Hey, Gary. You're muted. There we go.
Yeah, that's Jerry. Yeah, I guess for spring break, wow, it's been a long time since I've really gone for it on spring break, but I think maybe I'd go to Jackson Hole, Wyoming and do some spring skiing would be my choice. I'm a CTO at a company called Fat Tail in Los Angeles. We're an ad tech company. That's
Awesome.
it.
Thank you, Jerry. The next one I have it in my screen, it's Johnny. Where would you go for spring break and what company do you represent, Johnny?
I think I would probably go to Vegas because I am. And I wouldn't go in spring, I'd go in April. And I represent, I work for a company that is what we call a transmedia incubator entertainment company. So Elevate Pictures is where I kind of started with. I run the labs and a bunch of R&D there. And we've recently come together with a bunch of other companies and formed Iceberg Theory. So I'm currently the CTO for Iceberg Theory. We work with Ultraman and a ton of other entertainment properties and do things like that.
Awesome. Sounds interesting. And yes, who doesn't love going to Vegas, right? And more if you're winning. So the next one I have on my screen, it's Ben. Hey, Ben, how's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good. So I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Connect Air, and we're doing Uber for airplanes. So pull your phone out of your pocket and fly direct from a small airport to another small airport. So where I want to go and what aircraft I want to go in is top of my mind. So I do Aurora to Friday Harbor, Washington. So land up on one of the islands just north of Seattle and fly a little bitty propeller plane on the way there.
Awesome. That sounds like a great adventure and a great way to go to and have a spring break. The next one I have on my screen, I want to welcome also, it's Matthew. Matthew, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Yeah, so spring break. It's been a while, like some of the other guys here. So probably Trinidad for the curry. I'd probably go to Trinidad.
Okay.
I just started my own company. I was CTO at a company called ArtNet. I have been doing my own thing for about 3 or 4 weeks now, and I am writing software to help other software development shops optimize their the way they write software.
Understood. Thank you for sharing, Matthew, and best of luck with this new venture.
Thank you.
If Rachel, can you hear us and can you share us where would you go for spring break right now and what company do you represent? I think Rachel, it's not available, so I'll skip her, and if she replies to us, I'll come back to her. Also want to welcome Sean and Diego and Fanny. Can you guys hear us?
Yeah, this is Sean. I can hear you.
Awesome, Sean. So where would you go for spring break and why? And what's the company that you represent?
I would probably go to Switzerland because I haven't been there since I was a teenager. Although Trinidad does sound nice. Spent some time out there too. I'm with a company called Nora Systems in Tucson, Arizona. We're a systems integration company. So we do fire alarms, access control, camera systems, burglar alarms, automation control, all that fun stuff.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. I also saw that Fanny was about to speak. Hey, Fanny.
Hey, glad to be here. So, spring break. Actually, I'm kind of a simple person, so I'm fine with just going to Vegas and check out the newest hotel. I think it's called Resort World, so that's what I want to go. And yeah, I'm a fractional CTO, so my client right now is Enterprise Selling Solutions. We have one of the best and the most used software for HVAC. And yeah, prior to that, I have a 15 plus years of experience as software engineer, been with Fortune 500 and small businesses and also startups alike.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Fanny, and also welcome to our event today. I can also see that Ray just joined. Ray, can you hear us? Diego, can you hear us? Are you guys there?
I can hear you now. Thank you. I'm having a little trouble with the video, but I'm glad to be here. I hope to stay on Kauai for spring break as I've recently moved to the islands and I'm running my various enterprises for wellness and transportation over on the Garden Island.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Ray. And lastly, Diego, if you can hear us, can you share your answer for the question or should we move on to the next section of the agenda? Diego on 1, Diego on 2, Diego on 3. All right. So I appreciate your answers and we're gonna now show what's the agenda looking like. So we start at 4:30 with an open talk. This was the icebreaking questions. And at the moment, we're just gonna have some welcome words and introduction from our host, Powdevs. And at 4:45, that's in 2 minutes, so I'll be brief. We're gonna have the main speaker, Bryan, talk about into the metaverse. So go ahead with the next slide, Giselle. So first, what is West Coast CTOs and Tech Pros? We are an authentic community for technology enthusiasts in high-level positions, especially C-level, that are involved in the technology area. We are also happy to have vice president of engineers and directors of software development and more. And our goal is just to create a place where these tech gurus can network, learn, and at the same time have great speakers like Bryan participate in this community. We're pretty sure that you are going to find other great professionals that you can expand your network and make those great connections that you never know what's going to happen on the future, right? If it's going to be more business or just getting together to learn from each other. Next slide, Giselle, please. So about our chapter number 1, we had it on November 18 of last year, where we had the honor of having speakers like Alex Munn and Brian Arales from Macamer, who are a biotechnology California company that spoke about the importance of how we can keep our ecosystem free of long-lasting plastics through the help of technology, right? So I still owe them some bottles of wine that I need to take to LA. So if you guys are in LA, I'll take you to drink with Alex and Brian, all right? Next slide, Giselle. So who's the host? Host for this event is Powdevs, and their motto is do it right the first time. They are a software development company that offers augmentation nearshore software development and app development that will advance their technology capabilities from initial concept to fully complete successful projects in a professional, personal, and friendly way. What makes Powdevs different? They are located in Mexico Pacific time zone, which makes communication live, constant, and very easy to leverage with your technological needs in the US and Canada for you and your team. How they do it right the first time, they will schedule a discovery meeting to build your ideal client need profile. Then they will source, interview all the developers or technology resources they need, and they're going to make sure that they are a cultural fit, that they have the experience, they speak great English, and that they're going to check mark the technology levels that they need. Third, they will interview a call with you so you can talk to the possible candidate and validate if they're the right fit. And then if the client is happy, they're going to move forward, and the employee will start working for you and your team under your methodologies, tools, and time zones. Next slide, Giselle. So the value that they propose is that they are the ideal partners for companies who are seeking to extend their teams with remote, highly skilled technology individuals in their time zone with no intermediaries and in a cost-effective way. And lastly, from our host, we have the brand promises. They get the best technology talent from Mexico and Latin America. They offer a 45-day money-back guarantee. They have great English-speaking talent in your time zone, and there is no upfront cost until you are convinced and decide to hire the resource. So now we're going to the main event. Bryan, it's your turn to have the forum, and I'm presenting Bryan Chasko, who is digital twin scene architect. Bryan has been minimizing software architecture burden on businesses while building on cloud providers for 15 years. His leadership career has spanned education, defense, retail, and healthcare. Bryan has been creating interactive 3D interfaces featuring ambient voice assistants for 11 years with focuses on accessibility and breaking down silos to data access. Bryan, the floor is yours.
Okay, can you see a classroom now?
Yes.
Yes.
It's the ceiling at the moment.
Thank you, Ryan.
Okay, so what you see scrolling there, and I know it's zoomed in a little bit, but what you see there is in Alamogordo, New Mexico, which is my hometown, or at least the top of those mountains you see in the desert seas there is. Alamogordo is known as one of the worst education places in America. New Mexico is known as one of the worst education places in America. And I'm a very patriotic fella, so it hurts me a little bit to say that America in education is not always number one. And so when we say that we're kind of the poorest of poor here, we really mean it. And we have a very interesting demographic here in Alamogordo, New Mexico. We're a military town. And for those who don't know the demographics of the military in the USA, it is a minority majority endeavor. So Blacks, Hispanics serve at a higher rate than privileged individuals like myself. And certainly in Alamogordo, New Mexico is our nation's first minority majority state. And I have a very strong passion when I hear about devs in Mexico, for Spanish speaking development and things of that nature. So I'm very grateful to Powdevs for this time to kind of talk about myself and our area and some of the stuff going on here. By the way, Giselle or Bernardo, I believe the agenda has me going for 15 minutes. Is that correct?
I do believe it was 30 minutes, Bryan, but you can
30
get
minutes.
the time that you want.
I
All
can do
right,
30 minutes.
Go ahead. The
All
floor
right.
is yours.
Cheers. So what you see in the background scrolling through here are pictures from a group called Lake Flato Architects. And Lake Flato is a group out of Austin, Texas, which is not like Alamogordo, New Mexico. Austin's obviously super hip right now, right? And but they've taken an interest in us and they've helped us design our school of the future for New Mexico. And we really want, and I'm throwing this out here on a West Coast CTO group saying we want to be the best school in the Southwest with this middle school we're launching. So it's very limited class sizes, a lot of it's a lot of beautiful natural light, obviously a lot of emphasis on technology. This is a very new thing for me, but I'm very excited that already I've been with this mission for 3 months, and I'm very excited that we're already working with NVIDIA and AWS on a 3D/virtual reality walkthrough of what you're seeing on the screen there. So I'm currently launching some EC2s and some individual stacks on the cloud to kind of bring this to life to help people understand what we're trying to do here in Alamogordo. And we do have two powerhouse laptops with Oculus Quest if you really want to dive into what this campus is going to look like. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And I think there's some press releases out there about that already, but for sure, if you you stay tuned with us. We're going to have some really cool spotlights and use cases moving forward with that. Okay, PowerPoint. Okay, you should see a beaver and a whale tail. That look about right?
Yes.
Awesome. So I have been building on the cloud for 15 years. I both GCP and AWS, and of course Azure. I'm a big MySQL guy, but I can't claim to use Oracle's cloud. And I spent 15 years in healthcare, security, retail, a whole bunch of industries. And when I first saw this event, I was tempted to talk about moving on. And I listened to everybody's intros, and I heard there's a lot of people who are already CTOs. And when you've spent 15 years in a startup journey as a CTO, you know, it's probably about time to hand that off to somebody else and take on the next challenge. But that doesn't mean it's easy. So, you know, if you want to dive a little bit deeper into how I ended up on this really experimental thing coming from healthcare and security, happy to dive into that in the Q&A. But I'm going to get a little bit anecdotal, actually a lot anecdotal. I know presentations are always a little bit more interesting when you've got a lot of stats and how it applies to trends and things of that nature. And I probably have those off the top of my head if you want to dive into them. But I think about Jeff Bezos, who said, when an anecdote and the data disagree, believe the anecdote. So this is going to be a very anecdotal presentation. So with that said, at this point in my career, I'm actually a recovering executive. And I say that jokingly and laughingly and lovingly to those of you who are CTOs, because I imagine you're where I was most of my life, where you feel almost the same thing as your young employees, where you feel a little bit of imposter syndrome, not because you haven't earned where you're at, but because the longer you are protecting your devs, protecting your team, figuring out the market strategies, finding the blind spots, the further you get away from those kind of core technical skills that maybe brought you into technology in the first place. They certainly did for me. So a couple of years ago, I parted ways with my healthcare journey. I'll dive into that in a bit. And I had stumbled kind of into this space of 3D and AAA gaming. And I also had stumbled into a world of visual analytics and artificial intelligence. And as I got away from the position, I felt like, man, I wish I understood more firmly where my artists were coming from. And even though I've been working with cameras for 10 years, I really don't feel like I understand cameras. So I kind of set up out on the road, and I went to get my professional photography certification, which, if you're CTOs, believe me, that's as out of left field for me as it was for you. And there's a couple of pictures of my adventure to earn that. I had this vision in my head. We were talking about where you would go for spring break, right? Like, man, when I stepped away from that position, the first thing I had in my head was, I want to go see a whale in Maine. And darned if I didn't go to Bar Harbor, Maine, and actually see about 7 different types of whales. But on my journey, somehow I decided, because there was a beaver pond there, that a beaver would be my photography subject. And so you can see on the right there, there's a beaver. So that beaver picture was actually in Massachusetts, but I want you to understand, in order to get that picture, I went from Maine to Oregon, up to Washington, all across and back over to Massachusetts before I finally found this beaver that I snapped a picture of. So a lot of my thoughts when I talk about my personal anecdote about the Metaverse are very tied into the beaver, and I wanted to give you that context as to why. So NFTs, everybody's heard of NFTs, and you know, pretty split debate. I'm not here on this call to tell you that NFTs are good. I am, as a CTO hat, I'm very into literally electricity and electricity costs. The more you kind of get onto cloud providers and pay as you go, the more you kind of learn to equate that proposition that way. Like how much power, how long am I keeping these fleets or these servers or these clusters up and running, and how quickly can I spin them down when they're not in use, right? So the concept of blockchain, I am not particularly myself a big defender of. However, I can step away from that as somebody fortunate enough to work with artists a lot and appreciate the possibility of being able to validate something as an authentic piece of art. I think about my friend who's in the top left there, Sandy Carter. Sandy was a bigwig executive at Amazon AWS, and she stepped away, and now she's very focused on this space, on virtual art and NFTs. And Lazy Lions, you see in the top right there, you see those lions, right? And depending where you're coming from, you might either totally believe or completely not believe that if you want to call one of those lions your own, if you want to have a bungalow where some friends can come in virtually and look at those lions on average cost about $45,000 cash in order to, quote, own them, where you can come in and, hey, there's your lion with the bubble gum and the crazy hat, right? So, and Sandy is all in on this at those costs, right? So a lot of people, that might be kind of hard to digest. Like, how is somebody doing that? Of course, if you're the parent of somebody who, buys Fortnite skins, or if you're like me and you spend too much money on Madden Ultimate Team or Call of Duty or something like that, you kind of get it. But it's a little bit easier if you put it in historical context, right? There's Salvador Dali. Hopefully some of you are familiar with him. If not, on the far right here is his Melting Clocks. And there you see some patrons of his. And throughout history, artists typically have only been successful with some wealthy patrons to kind of get them off the ground. And so when I step away from the nitty gritty of the technical conversation, it's very easy for me to understand, hey, you have this artist, they're trying to get enough funding where they can keep doing art. If somebody can kind of invest and say, it's worth it to me to pay $45,000 to be able to say, that's my lion. Well, I don't know how much Lazy Lions takes out of that cut. Certainly, as I mentioned earlier, blockchain has some pretty big server costs if you're trying to keep it running for 100 years. But nonetheless, if you're able to authentically validate a piece of art, it's a very real thing. And I think that gets lost a little bit in the technical part of NFT and ledger databases and some of that stuff, where it's just, is there a signature in the lower right side of that piece of art that you look at and you believe, like, yes, that artist did that, and that's my piece of art, right? So let's see, let's skip forward here a little bit. I mentioned I was going to dive into my healthcare journey. So I mentioned I started out in, we get lost in the minting and lose side of the ledger. Oh, well, that's fair. Yeah, ledger databases are quite a quandary, and I personally would advocate for seeing where there's artists. I talked about the Spanish-speaking world a second ago. I'm very, very passionate about looking out there and seeing where there's artists who aren't getting their art seen, who aren't making a living, trying to focus a little bit more on that individually than I am on the side of things that's about, the technical side, because it's easy to get frustrated at the technical side. But if you just help one artist get on and have a successful career, I think that's pretty cool. And to that end, in healthcare, we thought about a couple of things. We thought about, when I say we in this mission, talk about a company called Electronic Caregiver based out of Las Cruces, New Mexico. And a product we created called Addison Care, which is hitting the market as we speak. So the idea was, there's this sensing technology coming out. There's this medical alert technology that's been out. And the medical alert stuff that's been out since the 80s, like if you can get somebody help within their first hour after falling or having a stroke, their mortality rates are so much lower than otherwise. And we really believed in that side of things in terms of emergency response. But most individuals with health issues, which by the way, 60% of American citizens are managing chronic care conditions. Over half have something like diabetes that they're trying to manage day to day. And to quickly extract that to the financial part, right? Like if we're talking about whatever, 400 million people, and there's 60% of them that are dealing with insurance or government paid to get the care they need, you know, as a cost driver, you can really cut into margin if you can have any kind of impact on making things have better outcomes. So our concept was the best care you can get is in the home with Addison Care. So how can we take sensing data and provide it all the way through to the healthcare provider? And maybe more importantly, how do you get people to be not embarrassed by this technology and actually adopt it? So we dove all in. We went out to the Game Developers Conference. We worked with Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Intel, Dell, all these huge companies as a startup out of Las Cruces. And we created a virtual caregiver named Addison, who I'm sure if you look her up on YouTube, you can see all kinds of cool videos. And you can see on the right there, within a year of kind of this concept, we had something into production that we were taking around to Amazon Lofts. We were taking out there to San Francisco, taking it up to Seattle. We're taking it all the way out to New York and Ireland, and showing like, hey, here's some ways that you can use some of these technologies to actually connect your patient to their data. Certainly as an engineer, it's easy to get lost in everything in between that and not actually deliver that. But at the end of the day, I think that's why we're all here, is to actually have an impact on customer lives. And so as an example, with just conversational interfaces, we actually managed to get to a point where with Addison, we can have more accurate surveys than we could with our human survey takers for whatever reason. Maybe they got tired. I was one of them in the test, so my computer beat me, so to speak. But very fun experience building Addison, and we worked with a lot of big providers. We published over a dozen academic papers validating our research that went into looking at detecting anomalies in the way somebody walked, like maybe they have diabetes and they can't lift their toe quite as high. We detect that, we send out an alert to them and say, here's what's going on. Maybe we put that data in their health records if they've given permission. Maybe we give it to their son or their daughter if they've given permission. And very, very cost effective too, because of the architecture we used. This technology was actually built on some web technology called WebGL. If you have any interest in it, check out Babylon.js and 3JS. And this ability to connect to like backend bots and flows is available in GitHub from something called Amazon Sumerian Hosts. So that all kind of gives you a little bit of groundwork to introduction to 3D. I'm gonna presume that most CTOs, unless they're working for a game company, a AAA game company, really haven't encountered 3D, but here we are on this precipice of this new world. I've been building AR apps since 2011, cloud apps since 15 years ago, and it all kind of stumbled into place with this world that is exploding around the metaverse, right? And the metaverse is a nice concept, but I think, as Johnny said there, like, you got to focus on the right things, or what's the point? And so while Web 3.0 and a lot of buzzwords might be popular, at the end of the day, like what unique thing at 94, good for you. What unique thing can we kind of add to this world that adds values to people's lives? I think all of us look at the hype around, respectfully to Facebook, right? Meta and Metaverse and all these things. And we go like, what is actually useful? I'll dive into that a little bit. But before I do, I wanted to focus on this 3D piece and say, in my opinion, there's really 3 players that you want to look at if you're in a non-3D space and you're thinking about like, how can we get into the metaverse? How can we include the real world in 3D, or the, you know, a world where we've got 3D objects, you know, in our interfaces, or anywhere in between. And I feel there's three kind of pillars you can stand on. Of course, there's other things. There's Unreal Engine, there's Open 3D Engine, which I'm a big advocate of. It's from the Linux Foundation. There's Godot, another open source game engine. There's, of course, Unity, which is the big gorilla in the room that has a lot of adopters trying to grant it. But to me, I really look at three different things, because I come from the CTO space. Like, I'm less concerned about a file format. I'm more concerned, like, how can I deploy this to a market? So Addison, we built using WebGL, which is built on something called OpenGL. At the end of the day, just like you've got JPEG or MP4 file formats, you've got something.
I gave it back already.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I gave it right back when I came back.
Okay.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
All right. So with this, you've got something called GLTF, which is a file format, right? And this comes from an amazing group called the Kronos Foundation, and they're doing a great job, of trying to figure out how to take these 3D objects and bring them to life. But OpenGL was developed about 30 years ago, and we've learned a lot of different things. Since then, Pixar has contributed to the world something called universal scene description. That's a little bit different, right? WebGL can run in your web browser, so just as easily as you can make a web page, you can have a 3D object in that web page. Universal scene description is really, how do you take these big, heavy Pixar movie scenes and objects and bring them together to something you can actually get to market? If you don't know the story behind Toy Story 2, the team there actually accidentally deleted the whole movie weeks before production, and they just so happened to have a artist on maternity leave who had a backup copy of the movie. Otherwise, Pixar probably wouldn't be here today, and Toy Story 2 would have never come out. Through beautiful failures like that, they've created this open standard called Universal Scene Description, which is a really great deal. I saw this article today saying that USD could be the HTML for the metaverse, digital twins, and more. You know, I see Johnny saying maybe VRML. Personally, at the moment, I'm pretty hot on WebGPU, which which Google is putting into. That was the 90s, he says. Google is putting in as a standard to kind of replace this layer, or maybe provide almost like a understandable API to this layer. Certainly works a lot with the tools that have been and libraries that have been created here. But the idea between WebGPU is, to Johnny's point, you know, devs are probably going to do something better with something that looks like Go or Rust or even JavaScript or a JavaScript library, something that looks web native versus something that was, you know, created with the compute standards of 30 years ago. Quickly mention, you know, there's another way you can go with all this, of course, which is professionally rendered scenes and movies, Netflix, things of that nature. Some of what you'll see coming up, I built with Nimble Studio from AWS. Basically, you can launch what you see here as a Blender user interface that's actually launched in the cloud, and they can have an entire render farm up there. Another really cool example when we're talking about the potential here that I like to reference is another AWS service called RoboMaker. And what you see on screen here, out at one of Amazon's trade events, I actually built a virtual robot that is able to navigate a virtual warehouse. And I can't remember where Amazon got these worlds, but they have tons. It's called the World Foundry, and it's just tons and tons of virtual worlds. But of course, you know, if you're really trying to achieve this in a warehouse, you want to bring in your warehouse. If you really want a, like Toyota use this technology to build a robot that was able to navigate 20 stories up, grab a pallet off of a tray 20 stories up, and then cleanly navigate it to another part of the warehouse and deliver it. So of course you can easily apply that to the self-driving car world. This is again one of those virtual cities they applied, and they have a car here working through its real world physics in a virtual world, so you can kind of avoid some crashing. So back at Addison Care, I wrote a patent that kind of took this concept and applied it to a way that maybe some of you will be able to digest it a little bit more relatably. Not to say that self-driving cars aren't a huge deal. I mean, when we talk about climate change and things of that nature, the ability to reduce, each car's emissions by a percentage is a big deal. But I had this idea of, the ability to predict emergencies before they happen. I mentioned one earlier about diabetics and not tripping on a rug, right? Like when the way you walk changes. But just think about C3PO from Star Wars and a voice popping into your head saying, like, if you don't slow down on your chewing, you're going to choke. And you scream, never tell me the odds, right? But certainly having a virtual version of us in a world where we can kind of predict our behaviors and play them out a little bit, I think could be super cool, particularly as we look at dietary habits and the fact that maybe we got a sugary drink that has sugar instead of being a Coke Zero or something like that. So I mentioned earlier, I've been working hard personally on being a better artist. I took over, I guess as a plug, took over the Boston Blender users group while I was out in New England. We do meet the last Saturday of every month virtually, so y'all are more than excited and welcome to, we would be very excited and we would welcome you with open arms if you wanted to join us here. I also organize a AWS users group throughout the Rio Grande corridor, going down in Juarez, Mexico, and up to Albuquerque, New Mexico, including Texas here in New Mexico, where we dive into Amazon Web Services use cases. That's the second Thursday of every month. So if you ever look me up on social, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, I'm more than happy to embrace you in these communities. But two pieces I really wanted to get my own skills up on a little bit were something called Side Effects Houdini, which is used to do a lot of the virtual effects in Hollywood. And then Boston Blender, which is open source. So they're kind of two ends of the spectrum. One's this big Hollywood production piece, and certainly you can use Blender for big Hollywood production pieces, but it's open source. So that's a place where in the community I can engage with some people who are just starting out or coming from some different backgrounds. There you see a pumpkin. This one I, so to speak, carved or freehand these two pumpkins. Those are not my finished products, but I think they show the textures pretty well. And literally I took a pin. Let's see, can we kind of like that one, if any of you can see my camera over on the side. And all those textures I actually created by hand. Now, when you get into the 3D world, polygons are very important. How things interact in the physics world is very much down to this level. So another way that the art world, the digital art world, the graphic design world is kind of moving is something called node-based interfaces. So they're stepping away from having to do that freehand art. They're stepping away from having to do code, and they're putting things into these flow graphs. And what you see on the screen right there actually created some of the things that you're seeing on the screen now. So matter of fact, on the top right there, I even have GIF. It shows you all the nodes that went into creating the teacups and then putting them on a carousel. And then you can just use math to make it, instead of 6 cups like you see there, 7 cups, 8 cups, 9 cups, things of that nature. So these are art renderings that are made, or raw art that's made in Houdini. And I showed them off to show the example that, yeah, you've got this big AAA tool, but like, for those of you watching this, if you're not from the 3D world, like you're not going to pay to watch something that looks like this. So you still have to use something like Blender if you're trying to get a whole bunch of colors and life, despite how good your fundamental mechanics and geometry is there. One thing I'm super hyped about is Cesium. Cesium is a JavaScript library available that takes the entire real world As much as we might want to avoid stuff going back prior to 90, it was around 86 that engineers mapped out the entire world and figured out an agreed upon set of physics and then started laying 3D content on top of them. So what you see on the screen there is northern New Mexico. That's Chaco Culture National Park. A really cool place. You go back in time 8,000 years ago, and in America, the tribes in the Southwest would all meet in Chaco Canyon to do trading and things of that nature. If you ever get the chance to go there in person, it has a very, this is my second Star Wars reference. There's a very like Tatooine feel, right? Like the feeling that you're going into this desert trading post where you might run into a bounty hunter or a hunt solo, but really cool stuff because they have no running water, and the way they were able to use the rain fall capture and actually sustain life. And Metropolis is pretty cool. So, Metaverse, 3D data, all this, what can we use it for in the real world? I got pretty interested in around Seattle. They have some orcas in the bay there, and the orcas are dying. In the Puget Sound, actually. And when you dig a little bit deeper, you find out that in the state of Washington, which is about as much of a salmon-eaten state as you can get, the toxicity levels in the state of Washington for salmon have reached, the second time I've used this number, but 60%. That's not great if you're eating salmon. It's not great if you're an orca. And maybe the most horrifying thing I heard about that is the way that happens is there's an inversion layer. The CO2 from your cars goes up, becomes rain, and it comes down onto your houses before it goes into these streams. So what does that mean for humans, right? Well, there's a little bit of a folk hero here, and that's the beaver. The beaver build natural aquifers, and they reduce the temperature, which helps us with forest fires. They remove toxins, which helps us with toxin salmon. And they actually set up pools where the toxin are able to recreate. So this is something I made using geospatial data in Blender. This is real world data from Google Maps, actually, where they were able to extract the altitude data of the region there. And in that river valley, you see there, 20 years ago, 2 man-made dams were removed. And that's a big deal because 20 years ago is within the lifespan of Google Maps. So this is actually something that's played out within our lifetime, where you can actually see the impact beavers have made after man kind of evacuated the area there. I mentioned O3D earlier. This is, I don't think animated. Oh, there you go. So again, I am a CTO is my background. 15 years as an executive, never touched art in my life. I managed to create this salmon here, give it all this beautiful texture and move it around, add that animation, throw it into a game engine, and then add some lighting, add some proceduralism to build out the vegetation. And there, after literally 1 month of me learning this stuff, is something I built in a AAA game engine, with the concept being to simulate if there's a beaver in the region, what's going to be the impact on the salmon there. That, I believe I'm about at time there, but I did want to give you this YouTube link if you want to dive a little bit deeper into that piece, right? Like that intersection of Metaverse all the way up to the AAA game engine. But hopefully that gives y'all enough of a teaser where maybe somebody might have some questions or places they want me to take that a little bit further, because that's the end of my prepared remarks. And again, Powdevs and everybody, I really thank you for having me and look forward to tackling any questions y'all might have.
Awesome. Thank you, Bryan. Super interesting. A round of applause for Bryan.
Cheers, cheers.
I like the salmon. It looked pretty cool, all right? So congrats on that. And more that you're learning all of this in your own, and it's awesome that you have also that creative side, not only the programming side, right, the logical side, but you're also working on this. So right now, I want to also invite you guys to leave your information in your chat, your LinkedIn, your social media, if you want to connect with others in the event. And I'm gonna open the Q&A section. So please feel free to ask any questions for Bryan. Do we have any questions? Also, I want to welcome Sky. Sky, I saw you joining on the presentation. Welcome. No questions for Bryan?
I'd be curious, Johnny's kind of...
Yeah, I see Johnny on my screen too.
I'd be curious his input on how things have changed in the last 38 years.
No. It was not a dual Pentium 100 to do World Toolkit and start in C in 1994, I promise. Yeah, it's been a very, very long VR road, and a lot of that has been for me in media because I got pulled out into other things. But you hit the what NVIDIA is doing with Omniverse, right? That would be the only other kind of thing I would say from a generalist, from a CTO perspective, that isn't like me living in games and entertainment every day. That's definitely a great place to look. Blender, we have literally looked at the cost factors and vectors on Maya and all. I hope nobody from Autodesk is here because they're local and I love them. They're awesome. But we're going all Blender, baby. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to spend all this money when Blender is freaking amazing, and you can then integrate a few other pieces to get where you need to go.
You know, that's amazing. I did have to make the investment in Addison Care as a CTO in the Autodesk for all the artists, especially since they had the background coming straight out of college. You know, that's what they were trained in. But again, when I think about Latin America, when I think about the rural communities, when I think about places where garage artists can have a huge impact, like Blender makes me so excited because somebody can get in and have a place in this giant world. I mean, New Mexico, we're very proud. Granted, it's a funny statistic, but New Mexico has passed Hollywood for the number of film productions that we have here. Granted, Hollywood, not California, right? But you know, it's something I get super fired up about when I think about, like, how can people not only be somebody holding a camera out here in New Mexico for Netflix, but how can we actually make that Johnny's team's making there? And I think Blender is the only way you can really get into it.
The reality, and this is basically what I did from like 2015 in that realm, is it's all about the tax incentives for the big studios. So it floats between, you know, different Ohio, New Mexico's got a really good one, North Carolina, Oregon's got a little one, but it's the tax incentive, and that's kind of how they look at it. That's why if you look at like the old California statistics on how movies get broke down, Iron Man was made in like 13 countries. Iron Man 3 was made in like 13 countries because it's all these different post houses that are doing these different specific shot packages all across the globe because they're taking advantage of tax incentives wherever they can. It's fun. So yeah, encourage your local legislators to bump up that tax incentive, and you'll see a lot more production in New Mexico, which I would highly encourage. I went to college in Santa Fe, so loved it.
St. John's?
No, the actual college of Santa Fe, back when it was
nice. Called. Cheers.
It was amazing. Molly Ringwald gave us our tour, because I was actually a theater arts major.
Oh. What? Molly Ringwald? What?
Yeah, I guess she was the love or somehow connected when we did our tour. When I got a scholarship. I'm not trying to brag, just telling you.
Thank you very much, Jenny, for that information. And also, it's pretty interesting that you also mentioned your college. Do we have another question for Bryan, or just a feedback about the presentation? Anyone will like to jump into the conversation? No more questions? Bryan, something that you want to add also about your topic for today?
I mean, I don't know how technical it is, but I skipped over the initial question, which is what I would have been doing during spring break. And as I mentioned, I'm in education now. I'm in the public sector now. after 15 years of struggling in startups as a CTO and then succeeding. But like, even when you succeed, it's like the idea of a spring break. I mean, it's your question almost is comical, right? But here I am. I actually got a spring break last week. I got a paid week off, and I chose to go around to White Oaks, New Mexico, which is a ghost town. You know, there's a business there that decided in the 1920s, or, you know, a town to put their stake down and say, hey, railroad, we got you. You're going to come through here, so you pay us a fortune. And the railroad said, you know what? We're going to go 12 miles west to the town of Carrizozo, and now it's a ghost town. And so I skipped over it a little bit, but when I look at Cesium and these 3D engines, the thing that stokes me up so much is the idea that you can take your actual virtual city and think through city planning decisions. When this state of Washington was talking about the salmon population, the fisheries up there, they said, you know, this is a city planning thing. This is what direction do blacktops need to go? And those directions don't come into play for 20 years. So if we get started today, we're not going to see the impact for 20 years. But this is, you know, to Johnny's point, if you've been around this sector for 20 years or so, 30 years, right? This is the first time you've ever seen it where you're like, holy cow, we can actually give non-technical people those tools to make those decisions. The other thing, it's a personal anecdote. The end of that spring break, we went to, my mom and I went to Smokey the Bear National Park, where the Smokey the Bear, who was rescued in the 1940s, is buried. And same thing, right? Like, what can we do as technology people to prevent these massive forest fires? Because the real world data is there, right? Like, I think it's so special to be living in this age as technologists where we can actually take these tools and actually have a technology impact on these problems. I just think it's super cool and it excites me. And that's what I actually did with my spring break. But I would have loved to go up to Washington State. I love Mount Olympus and that whole area. The sun, I'm a light-skinned guy, you know. And the Northwest, I'm pretty fond of it for breaks. Cheers.
Thank you, Bryan. And yes, maybe we need a spring break, right? It's been a while, but the question is for that, right? Maybe we need to think about having a break from our work and just relaxing for a week or two, right? So thank you very much, Bryan. I'll give you a virtual clap on the Zoom app, and we'll move to the next section. Before we conclude our event, we like to open a networking time. And of course, if you would like to have a one-to-one private breakout room with someone from our guests, just let us know and we can send you to that breakout room so you can have a one-to-one networking session. Or if not, you can stay here and we could talk about the metaverse, because for me, it's been a great experience since I got my Oculus, but the only thing is that I've been trying to play more video games on it, but I get very dizzy, right? So I'm kind of new on this one. So if any of you have an advice on how to stay more, let's say, healthy while using the Oculus, I'll appreciate some feedback.
I'll drop a link in. One of our companies that's coming out of Stealth is focused in VR in the wellness space. And we work with optometrists and neurologists in around a lot of those kinds of issues. So I'll drop the link to that. And then you can reach out through there. We're actually about to move out of that's actually why I'm headed to Vegas in April. But no, I didn't mean to do that.
All right, yes, please share the link and I'll be happy to browse it.
You know, I know that the VR headsets are evolving, but you're still an early adopter, Bernardo. I mean, even with first-person shooters on the TV, you're going to experience that motion sickness. I haven't seen good disclaimers on like how to avoid them, but you got to kind of understand about yourself that the things that are designed for first-person view are not really designed for you as a user, right? So I don't know that there's good filtering at the moment, but if you can find anything that's got like third-person stuff, I think that'll help. And probably things that are a little bit less chaotic in their movement will probably.
I agree, because the first thing that I did, it was jumping into Resident Evil 4 because it gave me nostalgia when I used to play it on PS. But woo, after 15 minutes of playing it, I went to the fridge and got a Coca-Cola so I could just feel better. But it's an amazing experience, right? Even my mom and my father, they had the opportunity to go and visit virtually other cities. So they're amazed about how the technology is just quickly adapting and just moving forward, right? But thank you, Bryan.
Cheers.
The thing to look for is some of the stack they're using foveated rendering, which means they're looking at your eyes. And that helps immensely, because if they can keep you in the right spatial position, that also helps keep that vestibular from making you feel all wonky.
Johnny, how did you say you picked that up as a consumer?
So the HTC Vive Pro Eye is on the market for the consumer that has eye tracking. The new Focus 3 from HTC, which is this one, in the SDK, I haven't gotten to get into it too deep yet because I have a few things going on, is they have a foveated rendering option. So they're doing something. And then there's a number of others. What Zuckerberg and Meta is doing, they're talking a bit about this as well. He just actually put out an article about frame rate and some of that stuff for them trying to resolve some of this stuff. But.
Awesome. Fanny and Rachel also left the event, but it's amazing to learn more about this great topic. I don't know if Matthew Bergen, they want to do a little bit about feedback about the presentation. Also, if you guys have some suggestions for our next chapter 3, on how we can improve, that's always very valued by the team. And at the end of the day, the event is for you guys, and we want to always be improving on this kind of chats and networking events. So we're always open to hear you guys.
Awesome.
All right, so if there's no more feedback questions, Bryan, I will get in touch with you later because I need to send you a bottle of wine with Alex and Bryan. I'll send it via Amazon or we'll figure it out. But I have to thank you once again for your time and for the chat that you just gave us, and at the same time I want to open the section. If you would like to be a speaker for our next event in June, please let us know and we will be happy to have you and chat about the topic, right? So once again, thank you all and see you on chapter 3. Have a blessed Tuesday, and please feel free to connect with me or anyone else on this community.
Cheers. Thanks, everybody.